Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6:38 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order and ask everyone to please silence your cell phones or other electronic devices. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council amend the November 4th Council agenda to add bylaw regarding Gordon Toby Development License occupation under sections 9.5 and 12.6. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the November 4th, 2019 Council meeting agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. Councillor Bateman?
I will be declaring under 6.2 fees and charges, just the section that applies to the ice rental rate for youth sport. As the president of Brighton Minor Hockey, I have to declare for that. And also under section 9.4, the draft policy on the use of Indigenous logos on municipal property, again as the president of Brighton Minor Hockey. But I will extend the offer once again to update the public and council on where we are in the process, if anybody would like to know.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor LeBlanc.
I also have to declare on 6.2 when it comes to fees on the fill.
So when it comes to voting on that, because they're not separated out, you would not be voting on the entire fees and charges bylaw. Are you okay with that, or do you want us to separate those discussions out?
If we're able to separate them out, because it only represents a small portion of the fees, and it'd be nice to be involved in the other part.
Is council okay with that? So when we come to 6.2, and specifically the bylaw later on, if we go to pass the bylaw, we will separate the specific fees and charges that we're talking about for the conflicts, so that we can just deal with those separately and deal with the rest of the fees and charges as a whole unit. Does that make sense to you, Mrs. Whitfield, as the presenter of this?
That's fine. This is a public meeting tonight, just for the fees and charges, and there is no bylaw.
There's no bylaw tonight, so it's just the section. Okay, so we'll simply during the discussion we'll discuss those two items first, so that you two can step out, then step back in during the other discussions. Are there any other declarations of pecuniary interest? Noted. Any announcements? Councillor Anderson.
I just want to mention that how successful the Christmas at Presqu'île appeared on the weekend. I got down there, but they said come back later, and I never came back. It was such a long lineup, but I'll be back. I'm looking forward to this Friday night, the Cotterington Harvest Dinners. No, it's actually Saturday night. And I'm looking forward to serving there. It'll be like old times. And I'm going to mention a couple of other things coming up. The Butler Creek condominium development that we've been seeing happening. There's an open house on the 19th, so anyone shouldn't miss that. I think it's important to keep on getting out the information about these meetings. There's also an important meeting on this coming Thursday, the 7th, about the Lake Ontario Shoreline Hazardous Management Plan. Anyone that lives along the waterfront or has concerns regarding the flooding and the damage to their property should be at that, because they want to hear from you, and it's all part of their work that they're doing. And that'll be at the Keeler Center in Coburn on Thursday night at 6:30. And one more thing. In relation to that, there's a protest rally in Trenton on November the 20th. And I think it would be nice to see, again, people concerned in Brighton area should come to that, and I think show the support to those folks that are doing that, people from Belleville, Quinte West, and the entire waterfront area. And the Brighton Christmas Parade. On a good note, is next Friday, the week next Friday. It's November 15th, so we should look forward to that and look forward to some better weather, and hopefully the bad weather's behind us. That's all I have, Mayor.
That's it? Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Bateman?
I was just going to quickly mention last Tuesday, the mayor's aware, because we had CBC News. We had worked on it a while. They came, and I won't touch on too much of it. They came to cover our story on not just Brighton Minor Hockey, but we are going to be rebranding because of the Indigenous logo. We're moving away from that. They spent 4 hours here. They stayed overnight, and I know they met with Mayor Ostrander the next day. So once we get the story and they send the link, we'll be sure to share it with everybody, because they were here for 4 hours and they did a nice, I think it's going to be a nice piece on Brighton as a whole. So
I think so too. Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any other announcements? Just a reminder, everyone, that the Candlelight Vigil will be on Sunday night, November 10th at 7 p.m. in Memorial Park, and then, of course, following the next day, Remembrance Day service at 11 a.m., also in Memorial Park, and our normal Monday council meeting will be moved to Tuesday in honor of Remembrance. So last chance for announcements. Thank you. Move on to adoption of minutes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Bateman. The council approve the October 21st, 2019 council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. We'll move into the statutory public meeting portion of our meeting, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council moves into the statutory public meeting November 4th, 2019 at 6:45 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. So we have two items in our statutory public meeting this evening, and the first one is with regard to fees and charges. So we were going to split this out, and I'm not sure how to do this in a statutory public meeting now that I've come to it, gentlemen. So what we'll do, there's no vote. And the only time for council discussion is under item 4. So gentlemen, govern yourselves accordingly. If you have questions with regard to fees and charges, I expect that you will govern yourselves accordingly. You know how to do that. So our first portion is, like I said, the 2020 fees and charges. And Ms. Whitfield, would you please explain the background regarding the fees and charges?
Thank you. So fees and charges are found in the Municipal Act under sections 390 to 400. We had a report that came to council on October 7th, which was presenting all of the proposed fees and charges for 2020. And we've advertised for that meeting in the Brighton Independent and also on our website. And so tonight is an opportunity for the public to address council with questions and comments on the 2020 fees and charges.
Thank you. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed fees and charges for 2020? Please step forward.
Good evening, Council. My name is Byron McBride. I am the Vice President of Brighton Minor Hockey. Just a bit of a background in terms of why we're somewhat opposed to these fees being increased. We've got approximately 220, 230 kids that play for Brighton Minor Hockey. We are trying to build our numbers. We see numbers in the area, such as our neighbors in Colborne. Their numbers are declining to the point they've almost got no teams running this year. We're trying to keep our fees as low as possible to keep a higher number of kids coming to Brighton to play. As we sit right now, we're approximately, $12,000 that we need to come up with this year to make sure we're covered with our expenses, ice times as it is. We're looking at another approximately $30,000 with the rebranding that we are embarking on because of the cultural sensitivity and the indigenous, to the indigenous people. Increasing our fees, my understanding they're looking at approximately $3 per hour. Will put another $3,000 bill on top of us. It's going to make it very expensive for kids to come play. Any of you that have been here on a Saturday or Sunday, you come in, you'll see the families in the crowd sitting with their kids, cheering them on. Next group of kids out, it's the siblings of the other kids. It's become a family event here on the weekends. You've got moms, dads, kids, grandma, grandpas, aunts, uncles, the whole family's here, friends from the community. If we want to keep this place full, we want to keep the kids coming, involved in minor hockey, give them something to do, we got to do our best to keep the numbers, the fees down. For looking for ways to raise money, we've got a canteen here. We have gate fees. People come in, they get here and they realize, oh wait, I don't have cash on me. Most of the teams that we play live anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half away to get here. They get here early. They've raced home from school if it's an evening game or from other events. Can we not look into maybe an ATM here where these families come in after they've been on the road for the last hour and a half and realize, I don't feel like driving to the bank. I just got here. I'm going to use the ATM here. I'm sure $2, $3, $1.20, whatever the fee is on hypothetical numbers, you'll get more people in an hour using the ATM than you will extra $3 an hour charging for ice fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who wishes to make comments or has questions with regard to the fees and charges for 2020? Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed fees and charges from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to go back on the minor sports $3 per hour increase, I see through the list it's the only one that's had an increase. Any reason for that?
I guess I'd ask Mr. Miller to comment if you will.
Well, it hasn't been raised in over probably 6 years. So we're looking at the rates that are charged around us, and 110 is still within the low increment of rates being charged.
Do you have comparators to the other municipalities that surround us?
I do have a graph, yes, in my office.
Would you be able to share that with members of council?
Sure, I can send it out.
As an email for information?
Yep.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. This is for Mr. Miller as well. Do you have a ballpark on what it costs to provide these rates? I guess I always want to make sure we're covering costs. And obviously an increase is because perhaps we're not. It could be because of wages, whatever. I guess I'm just trying to get a handle on why we're raising it this year, and so we all have an understanding of that.
Well, we have tried raising it in the past, and council's decided not to raise it. We have had increased rates with wages. Equipment costs more. Energy costs more. So that's why I raised it, because again, it hasn't been raised in 6 years.
Councillor Anderson?
When you're talking about increases in cost, we are also discussing tonight about a new chiller. We're discussing paving the front of the property here, upgrading it because we all know it's a swamp. And and there's one other item on the agenda tonight, the recreation, excuse me, I haven't got it in front of me. The what? Dehumidifier. Oh, dehumidifier, which is a biggie, which is it's probably something to help the old comfort zone of sitting in the stands. But so there are costs going to be happening at the end of this meeting going forward, even though I think Recreation's doing a great job in looking for funding for that. And if this is a request to pursue that funding, and there still would be a cost to us of about $20,000 or in the final scope of that whole program. But that money's got to come from somewhere in the budget next year, or so if we want to take it from all ratepayers, or we find money elsewhere, we can do that. So I just want to make note that we are doing improvements to this facility, and we are going to be talking about a possibility of a new facility somewhere down the road, but at least we're maintaining it and keeping it in business. And I think your memo at one time, Jim, was you wouldn't want to see that happened in Belleville and in Quinte West when their equipment failed. I think they were out for big part of the season. So anyway, I'm not being positive or negative on that the rate increase at this moment, but I'm just saying there are costs and things that we all need to consider when we're making a business decision or a good management decision on this. But it is about the kids. That's the bottom line. I love the ATV idea. I think not the ATV, that's on my mind, excuse me. It's the end of the ATV. ATM, I think that was an excellent idea. I've seen it work in other facilities where you do generate some funds off that, and you're right, you probably would generate a fair chunk around here. Who that would go to, it could go to the municipality, but it might be something that the organization can whoever manages it should get the proceeds of it, but it's a good idea.
And I assume you took note of that, Mr. Miller, the ATM idea?
Yes, and I could bring a report back for that.
Thank you.
At a future meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman?
Thank you, Mayor. Probably Mr. Miller could answer this, but my understanding, and it's been a long time since I had a son who played minor sports, so I have no grandsons, so I'm not there, but I understand quite a bit of the ice time is used by minor sports. Would you have anywhere a percentage, ballpark figure?
Oh, I'd say 70%, between 65 and 70.
And I have been told that Crammie's struggling to even have a hockey team, and that's not the first time I heard it tonight. And I do think that we need to encourage our young people to do recreational sports and not be constantly on devices. So I think $3 an hour is too much, and I would be quite content to leave it where it is.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Well, if it's through you, Mayor, to Mr. Miller, I think 2,500 and 3,000 is not going to help very much with the chiller. But we have great participation in this town, where other towns, even like Campbellford and Crammie, are struggling. The kids are coming here, the juniors are here, the program is working, we're getting great participation, and so why for $3 would we stop that and try to make them not coming? So the town, as a council, we should be getting the participation of our youth into our sports, and if we got to swallow 2,500 or 3,000, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Councillor Tadman?
Thank you again, Mayor. And the other thing that I have noticed through the years, there's families and businesses that are supporting those who can't afford it, and this isn't going to help by raising this. There's going to be more kids that aren't going to be able to play, and I think that we should do as a council whatever we can to keep our children active.
What's so is the consensus from council that we leave the rate at 107 per hour? Or is there another number we want to throw out there? Anyone? 107? 107? Looking down this side? Go ahead.
It's just from a business. It's just from again, it's administrative principles here. It's something we're going to have to do every year. Sit down and have this discussion and bring you out every year to view it. This is something that we should probably be looking at on a more, I know, say every 4 years. Set rate. These rates haven't changed a lot in a long time. So set the rates for 4 years and let's be happy, and everybody can work within that, and everybody can plan what they have to do, if it's for budgeting for the teams, budgeting for anything. But next year, they're going to be saying, well, what are they going to do next year? You know, so should we be deciding that tonight we're going to decide on a number, and that number will be good for a period of time?
Yeah, okay, sorry, we have to leave the door open, Deputy, we have to leave the door open for, I get that the noise is a bit much, but.
Was it something I said?
Okay,
Deputy
thank you.
Clerk. Go ahead.
So the problem we run into when we don't raise rates for 6 years is that all of a sudden we have to raise it by $3 in order to catch up. And that's the problem. So if again this year we don't raise them, the next year it's going to be an issue again and again and again. So perhaps we can look at maybe $1 this year and look at every year raising it a small amount so it's not a huge amount each time. Because unfortunately, our costs keep going up and we have to cover costs too, right? There has to be that balance. So I'd rather see us go $1 and then look at it next year again and just try to make sure we're balancing things out and covering what we need to cover.
So I have 3 at 107, and I have 1 at 110, and did I hear you say 108? There you are. So we've got 3 numbers out there. Go
Where did
ahead.
the 110 come from?
Well, I assumed you were at 110 from your discussion.
Don't assume. I just feel that we need to do it on a basis where we don't need to drag everybody in here every year. But I think if we do it on a simple or graduated system like the deputy mayor says, I would go along with the deputy mayor and say, let's call it fair and let's move ahead with $1 this year, and we'll look at it next year based on knowing that we put $1 in this year.
So I know you don't want me to assume, but I am going to assume something from what Mr. McBride said, and that's that a $1 increase amounts to about $1,000 for the cost of minor hockey. So I just...
Well, that's what, but Mr. Miller told me 2,000, so that's a difference in 1,000.
No. So I'm talking about what Mr. McBride said when he said a $3 increase amounted to about $3,000 for minor hockey. My assumption then is that $1 would equal about $1,000 that minor hockey will have to raise to cover their ice fees. That's
all right.
Just something I want to be cognizant of as we make this decision, because what we have are families raising money to keep their kids in sports, and I understand the purpose of...
And while we're still on the conversation, it is true, we could have probably found this $1 somewhere else in all this, like in hall rentals, and we haven't done that, have we? Because it's just a one line for if we need funds, you don't have to go after one place to get it.
Right, but I think that the intent is to recover costs for the purpose of that item, not
But the hall rentals...
rob Peter to pay Paul.
No.
Councillor Tadman.
Well, the hall rentals have been the same for a long time.
Thank you,
too.
Councillor Anderson. Councillor Tadman.
Mayor, I think that we'll be here till tomorrow arguing this. Could you just call the vote?
We don't have a motion on the floor.
Could I make a comment first?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this year, minor hockey will be struggling to have to come up with the $30,000 cost out of their budget anyway this year. So could we not maybe just help them out for 1 year and next year revisit this whole, there's going to be stress on their budget this year, this $30,000. This is something they have to pay for. We don't help out with that, correct? So I think we need to help them get through this logo issue, and then we can revisit this next year, and maybe then they will have an extra $1 or $2 in their budget to pay for the extra time for ice.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. So we'll move off of this particular discussion point. I'll ask if members of council have any other questions or comments on the proposed fees that are not minor sports related. And if there are none, I'll ask Ms. Widdowfield, do you have any final comments with regard to this report?
No, I do not.
Thank you. So I do have a motion, and I'm going to suggest that maybe the mover would want to withdraw, given the earlier discussion. But it's moved by Councillor Bateman, second by Councillor Anderson. The council receives the comments from the statutory public meeting November 4th, 2019 concerning proposed rates for the 2020 fees and charges bylaw pursuant to Section 400F of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended.
You should take your name off that.
You want your name left?
No,
Okay, so I'll need a mover, please. Thank you.
That's smart.
So that's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Anderson. And Councillor Rowley, as the mover, may I suggest that we add and further that the minor sports rates be frozen at $107 per hour.
I guess there's problems outside.
Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. The second item in our statutory public meeting is with regard to the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw and official plan. And Ms. Kay, would you, is it Key or Kay?
Through your worship, it's Kay.
Kay, thank you. Would you please explain the background regarding these updates?
Through your worship, yes. First of all, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Diana Kay. I'm a senior planner with DM Wills, located in the city of Peterborough, and also the project manager for the Brighton study, which is the collective name for the mature neighborhood study, the comprehensive, or not, the minor review of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Ms. Kay, could you just draw the microphone a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
Get right in there.
Yep, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I can hear myself better as well. Also with me this evening is Mr. Kevin Duguay, who has been a partner on this project with respect to all three studies. I'm just going to speak through to Mr. Silvestri. So I will just indicate next slide when we're ready for the next slide, and we'll work that way if that's helpful. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, also, can I make another request? Would you mind maximizing the screen so the slide, because some of the wording is a little bit small. There should be a slideshow option. And from current slide, over, yep, right there. And then I broke it. Great. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. Through your worship. We'll go to the next slide. So quickly, we're just going to provide a project overview. Kevin and I will both be making this presentation today. I will do an overview of the mature neighborhood study and official plan. Then I will turn it over to Mr. Duguay for the zoning bylaw and additional recommendations. So currently, the municipality is conducting a mature neighborhood study and a review of their official plan and zoning bylaw to go over a conformity review exercise with respect to provincial policies and also the county policies, and update the official plan and zoning bylaw accordingly. The mature neighborhood study has made recommendations to determine where it would be appropriate for development to occur within its mature neighborhoods to ensure that the character of the area is maintained. And also, there, under the official plan and zoning bylaw, we have undertaken conformity review exercises. Next slide. Just kind of in a nutshell, this is the Brighton study process. We divided it into 3 phases. The first phase was to undertake a steering committee for all 3 projects. We combined the official plan and zoning bylaw, so I'll speak to that together. It was also the opportunity where we started doing our background review, and this included desktop review, looking at the background information and documents that were available to us through the municipality and other avenues. We also began our public engagement process, which included preparing an online survey in order to start garnering feedback from stakeholders and the public. As part of the mature neighborhood study, we started our first community opportunity where we did a walking tour and a design charrette. We moved into phase 2, and this is where we started hosting 2 out of our 3 open houses, and where we presented our initial recommendations with respect to the updates. And currently we are in phase 3. We had our final open house on October 18th, so a week this past week on the Monday, and we recommended final policies within our study report. And that was taken from feedback from the public, feedback from the stakers, and as well as we started doing additional research, tying in all of the loose ends with the existing policies. We had our final steering committee meetings this morning, or actually this afternoon, in order to garner additional feedback, and now we're at the statutory public meeting process. Next slide. So just to start off with the mature neighborhood study, these are the documents that we prepared. From left, that's the background report. The middle is the report that contains the draft recommendations, and then the final report on the right contains the final recommendations. They're all available on the municipality's website if you haven't looked at them yet. Essentially, how this project came about is that the municipality felt that there was development pressures within their mature neighborhood and wanted to ensure that the character of the area was preserved while trying to meet the intensification targets that are being brought in by the province and implemented through the county's official plan. There was an interim bylaw that was implemented in December of 2017, and essentially that bylaw will hold development within the boundaries of the study area to ensure that we had time to undertake the study to determine where it would be appropriate to develop. So essentially the purpose of the mature neighborhood study was to assess current and new policies in order to manage and maintain the existing character of the area. So this is the study area boundary. This was provided to us by the municipality, so the project team did not come up with it. So we had to work within the study area boundaries that were provided to us. It's hard to see on this, but to the south of the boundary, that's the railway, and then this is Pinnacle. And it kind of jogs up as far north as the Fork, where there's County Road 30 and Yonge Street, and then kind of jogs around existing development and as far west as Ontario Street. So within this area, that's where we were studying. So to start off the project, we formed a steering committee earlier this year, and we commenced the online survey. We received 61 responses. Comments and questions ranged from what you would like to see in terms of development in your municipality, what's most important, do you want to see development happening inside or outside, the scale and type of development that you would like to see. Then our next public consultation event included the neighborhood walking tour, where we walked various streets within the mature neighborhood study area and had an on-ground discussion about what people felt were most important to them with respect to heritage, with respect to lot sizes or lot orientation, the type of houses that were situated, and then we came back and did a design charrette, where we asked individually to rank all the participants to rank what they felt was most important, within their mature neighborhood. And then we sectioned them off into groups, and then collectively they had to do the same exercise, but together had to agree on with a ranking, what was most important to them. As a community, it's a little bit harder when you have to try and come together and come to a consensus, so it was a good exercise to undertake, and we found that people were starting to see commonalities in certain areas and started to come to a consensus in terms of what they really wanted to see. Sorry, still back to the next slide. Then the final two public consultation events were the final two public open houses. The second one, there were 17 participants, and the final open house had 47 participants. So the identified key themes that came out of the mature neighborhood study, when it came to maintaining the neighborhood character, the highest ranking were actually street trees and architectural style. People really cared about what the houses looked like. They wanted to ensure that there was some greenery within their community. But there was also other discussions with respect to sidewalks on both sides of the streets, that the lot patterns maintained the existing lot patterning that was occurring, and that there was some streetscape and landscape design incorporated into the development. With respect to development and change, people wanted to see more affordable housing and ensure that development was compatible with the existing development within the mature neighborhood study. Parking and traffic was another item that was brought up, mostly with respect to where people were parking their vehicles and ensuring that there was available public transit. And there was some discussion with respect to downtown revitalization and connection to the waterfront via trail system. So to tie the key themes back, there were two major components in which we looked at, and one was residential intensification to ensure that we are developing the municipality in accordance and creating policies in accordance with provincial policy, and the second would be heritage. So the first one I'm going to talk about is residential intensification. So when we looked at the study area, we decided to take a step back because we noticed that there's some unorganized parts and way the municipality is starting to develop. You'll see that there is a concentration of development right here and right here, and then you're slowly starting to meet in the middle. And there's only opportunities for low and medium high density. So we tried to organize how development could occur in the municipality with its existing features. And we came up with this system. So the core area comprises of the downtown, and that is in the red. The central area, I apologize for how hard this is to see, is in the orange, and that's surrounding the downtown and acts as a transition to the balance of yellow, which is the urban area. Next slide. So with that, we realized that the mature neighborhood study is actually in the area mostly located within central and core, which is where the highest density is proposed. So along with that, we also have some of the most beautiful homes within Brighton, and they have some architectural styles and unique features that the community felt were really important and wanted to preserve. So now we're in an area where we have to intensify development and where we're going to bring development, and we have some heritage features that we want to ensure that are preserved as that development is coming in. So with respect to intensification, we came up with policies with respect to ensuring that when a development proposal is brought to the table, that developers or municipal council, developers or property owners, as well as municipal staff, are considering massing, height, setbacks when development proposals are coming in to ensure that they're thinking about the surrounding land uses and that the character of the area is maintained and that the use that's being proposed is compatible. So those are some of the design features that that we included in the policies and carried forward into the official plan to ensure that it's being considered as intensification starts to happen within the mature neighborhood study area. With respect to heritage, there's 53 properties that are on the municipal index. 9 are designated, and only 2 are located within the mature neighborhood study area, and they're both municipal buildings. So as part of this, we thought, all right, there's opportunity here to encourage municipal staff and to encourage council to create a committee that will start going out there and encourage heritage opportunities with their residents. Of course, you can't compel somebody to designate their property or portions of their property, but at least engage in that conversation because we're hearing back from the community that it's important. So I think there has to work from the municipal side as well to reach out and describe what the tools are that are available in order to get that ball rolling. So in order to help this process, we created some definitions: neighborhood character compatible, cultural heritage survey, cultural heritage planning statement, so that way people understood and municipal staff could properly implement what these studies and what these words mean and tie it into proposed developments. We also changed some of the language in the official plan. It was very passive, and it would say that you may undertake studies. So we've recommended to change that language to shall in order to provide municipal staff and council with more teeth to ensure that the studies that are required to be undertaken in order to support heritage is occurring. And of course, ensuring that properties are getting listed as part of the designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. Another key recommendation that came out of this is urban design guidelines, because with those guidelines, it will help municipal staff to ensure that as development is coming in, there are design directions in which any applicant would ensure they had to follow when they're submitting plans. So that way we are maintaining the character in terms of those guidelines, and there's some kind of policy direction to put that in place. There's also the opportunity to create heritage conservation districts, and what this does is it identifies a boundary of an area that has heritage opportunity, and it gives it additional policies so that way they're protected from other types of development. It doesn't mean that the properties are designated, it just creates a district to say, we've recognized this as a heritage opportunity. We want to create additional policies in order to conserve that. This slide is basically just a summary of the recommendations, and for everyone's information, the presentation will be available on the municipality's website, so you can review that on your own time. I won't read it, I promise. So moving on, we took the recommendations from the Mature Neighborhood Study with respect to residential intensification and cultural heritage and moved that over to the official plan. So these are the documents that we prepared. We collected the background information, prepared the report in July. We initiated our first draft policies in August, and then presented the final recommendations in October. So again, in terms of public consultation, we formed a steering committee early in the year. We had another online survey and received 87 responses. The only difference in open houses is that the official plan and zoning bylaw had an additional open house in the beginning in order to introduce the documents, and that's the way we could start to garner feedback from the public in terms of what they felt needed to be changed. Next slide. So going through the official plan, what we're going to do is I'm basically going to give you a high level of the major changes that we're proposing within the official plan. So when we started the project, the column on the left, these are the municipally initiated themes that we were to identify and review during the process. And what I've done is, as we went through the process and started talking to stakeholders in the public, the right side shows the key themes that were important to the public. And it's just interesting to note that there's a lot of similarities with respect to the themes that were being proposed under this review. Next slide. And then as we started going through the process, there were even more themes that were starting to come up, and some were initiated by the municipality, some were initiated by the project team, and then others were just based on comments that we were receiving from the public. So with respect to those themes, the next part of this, I'm just going to go over the themes to determine or to demonstrate the proposed recommended changes that we're making. So with respect to the intensification boundary, we identified that there's only two designations, low and medium. So there's no opportunity for high density development. There's no opportunity to achieve your density targets. There's no opportunity to make sure that you're organizing your development in terms of having a high, medium, and low transition in your municipality. So we decided, let's get rid of that designation and make one designation, which is just residential designation. And that permits both, or all three, low, medium, and high. So if a development proposal comes in, we would, or the municipality, would look at it based on the sub-district areas, which includes core, central, and urban. Yeah. So again, red is the core area, orange around it is the central area, and then all the yellow is the urban area. So when you're looking at residential densities, typically you would have your highest densities within your core area. This is about 60 to 100 units per hectare. In the central area, this is your medium density. It's more of a transition area in which you would have up to 60 units per hectare. And then in the balance, this is your urban area, which permits up to 30 units per hectare. So when development applications come in, oh, you're good to go to the next slide. Yeah, you're doing great. Thanks. You would start to see that there's a transition. So you go from the core area, you're going to see some of your higher developments. This is mixed use residential and commercial. You'd have commercial at the bottom, residential at the top. Increased density, smaller units, more compact form. As you transition to the central area, it's going to start to decrease in density, so you're going to get a medium to low density. So you're still going to have residential and commercial opportunities, but you're not going to have that mixed use type of development. You're just going to have both types of development within the area at lower densities, and this acts as a transition from when you get to your downtown out to the boundaries of the urban area. And then your urban area, which is your low, would kind of trail off. Next slide. Another item in which we introduced was we noticed that there weren't any neighborhood commercial uses that were permitted and within the residential designation, and we felt this was important to introduce. So as you're building communities within your community, when you started approving these development plans, we noticed they're primarily residential. So there's no local opportunities if someone's living in a neighborhood to just run to their local convenience store or run to their local shop. They would have to get in their car and drive somewhere in the municipality to get their amenities. So we've introduced the concept of neighborhood commercial uses. These are some of the uses that would be permitted. Obviously, they'd have to be to scale. So if you go to the next slide, we also prepared some corresponding policies with respect to the size of the commercial uses, where they would be located, typically on an assumed public major road, not a highway. And that it would have regard for the land uses and the neighborhood character around it. Within high density, sorry if you can go back. One more, sorry. And in the high density, with respect to neighborhood commercial uses, it would have to be part of a multiple unit commercial residential development, and the number of, or the size, sorry, of commercial use cannot exceed that of a residential use in order to maintain the balance between uses. Additionally, we found that there were no community facility uses allowed either. There was a specific designation with respect to community facility uses, which meant that even if the municipality wanted to open up a new fire hall, you'd have to initiate your own official plan amendment in order to implement this type of use. And we thought that was kind of odd. So what we did was just deleted the community facilities and open safe space designation and permitted these uses within the residential designation. So these are some of the uses that are permitted. You'd have public administration offices, schools, places of worship, museums, community centers, arenas. Next slide. And then we included some additional policies. So if community facility uses are proposed within the community, they would have to make sure that they're located in proximity to other community facility uses, that the scale and form are appropriate for the area and they're compatible with adjacent uses, and also that they have direct access to collector and arterial roads and they have adequate off-street parking. So if you're implementing those type of uses, you don't necessarily need an official plan amendment unless you don't meet those policies. Another item that we added is with respect to built cultural heritage, and this came out of the Mature Neighborhood Study Review. We changed some policy to be a little more strict in terms of language, so we changed some policies that said may to shall. We also included an additional policy which really spoke to the establishment of the Brighton Heritage Advisory Committee. We heard that there was more opportunity here for council to work with members of community to ensure that a more robust program was being put in place with respect to heritage conservation. With respect to secondary dwelling units, which is now called additional residential units under the Planning Act, we included the policies. The first two items are directly from the Planning Act. So essentially, you're allowed within any urban or rural settlement area, within a detached, semi-detached, or a row house, you can have 2 additional residential dwelling units on a property, or you can have 1 in your house and 1 in an accessory building. With respect to the rural and agricultural designations, the first policy in the Planning Act doesn't extend to these areas. However, we do realize that there's opportunities here to provide additional housing for people out in the rural areas. So we also included that you can have 1 additional residential dwelling unit within a house or an accessory building. So that could be a detached garage or a shed. With respect to affordable housing, we understand right now that the County of Northumberland is undergoing an affordable housing strategy. Unfortunately, the timing between our study and their study aren't exactly aligned, so we didn't have any opportunities to review those policies in depth and start incorporating them into the updated official plan. So that's something that we'll have to continue to move forward outside of this project. We did, however, include this specific policy in order to get it started, and it's essentially saying that if there is an increased supply in affordable housing within your settlement areas and there is municipal servicing and there's capacity in that servicing, that you don't need an amendment to the plan in order to implement that type of use, so long as it's compatible with the surrounding area and it has available parking and adequate parking to service. Source water protection policies were overdue. Obviously, the Trent Source Water Protection Plan came out a while ago, so in consultation with Lower Trent Conservation Authority, we prepared some policies with respect to protecting Brighton's wellhead protection area. Next. Moving on to consent policies. The consent policies, because we have to take direction from the county's official plan, we couldn't really move any of the number of lots that are permitted in any designation. There is some work that needs to be done. However, until such time as the county updates their official plan and revises those numbers, Brighton's official plan has to stay the same. We did, however, change hamlet designation because we were able to do that. So it's been increased from 3+1 units or lots to 5 lots, and that's subject to the applicable studies, for example, a hydro-G to ensure there's enough water. So essentially what we've done with this policy is reorganize it so it's a little more user-friendly and easier to implement for municipal staff. Next slide. Another thing that we did is we noticed that from time to time lots merge inadvertently for whatever reason. So we've included a policy under the general criteria of consents to say that if this does happen, you can unmerge them and recreate the original lot fabric. With respect to rural and agricultural uses, there has been a lot of changes with respect to uses that are permitted in these areas. So from Publication 851, which is this policy document on the slide, we updated the permitted uses within the rural and agricultural designations to match the policy document. So if you have an agriculture-related use, it is a use that can be permitted within the area so long that it is serving the surrounding operations. It doesn't have to be on the same property as an operating farm. We also added on-farm diversified uses as a permitted use in both the official plan and zoning bylaw. We also noticed that there was a resource-based recreation designation, which would have to be site-specific. So every time you were looking at a golf course or you're looking at a facility that was oriented towards the water, you needed an update to your official plan. However, provincial policy allows this in the rural designation. So we just deleted the designation and included those policies under the rural designation. With respect to land inventory and future development, at this point, there's not much you can do. These are designated greenfield areas outside of your built-up area. So what we did was change deferred growth area to greenfield areas because that's the industry term. And we looked into the opportunity for recommending secondary plans, which Kevin will speak about later. We also included the Crown Land designation. So with respect to Presqu'île Bay and the Brighton Provincial Wildlife Area, these had official plan designations on them, even though they're maintained by the province. So we changed that, made it a Crown Land designation, and added policy that essentially said that we understand that this land belongs to the province, but the province will continue to work with the municipality to ensure that these areas are preserved and maintained. This is more just housekeeping items, just to update the garden and sweep policies to be a little more robust, to provide municipal staff a little more direction. This is really hard to see, but on the left column, these are all of the existing titles in terms of special development areas. I don't think you needed to label every single amendment that has happened where the property is and who did it, so we just changed the wording to streamline it. So all of these special development areas within a specific designation, we just called special development area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to 14. And we did the same thing. There's additional special development areas with respect to Butler's Creek, with respect to the Main Street revitalization. So we just called these special policy areas and to make the distinction between the special development areas. So it's just tightening up a bit of the language. The next few slides just show the updates in maps. So all the maps have now been updated to reflect the changes in the designations, the ones that we've deleted, the ones that we've revised, and the ones that we've kind of merged together. So if you just look at the differences between the maps, we tidied them up, we made the colors more saturated, so it's a lot easier to see. The lot concessions were for some reason at the forefront, so we made those a lot lighter. With respect to the natural heritage, these maps did change a bit. We got additional information from Lower Trent Conservation Authority, as well as proposed areas and links from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which they told us that we should be using in order to prepare these maps. So you're going to notice through the updated official plan that there are additional wetland areas. I don't think there's a lot provincially significant, but a lot of updated unevaluated wetlands that have been included in the mapping. So that's something for municipal staff to watch out for when policy needs to be implemented, when they look through development applications. Transportation maps, we just tidied them up. Really here the goal is to determine where your collector and arterial and highways are, so now they're easy to identify. We include an aggregate resource area map, and essentially it determines where your active pits are, where your inactive pits are that are currently going through rehabilitation, and the primary, secondary, and tertiary resource. We didn't really change the community improvement schedule, we just made it a bit tidier and easier to read. And we added a trail network schedule, which identifies the provincial and municipal trail system. And we included a schedule for the wellhead protection area. Since you have policies, you might want to know where it's located, so we've updated the official plan with the schedule. And this is the map that I've showed you probably 3 times throughout the first part of this presentation, and this is a schedule that will be added to the official plan, identifying the district sub-areas with respect to densities. So this map identifies the built boundary. The red is what we're proposing in terms of the built boundary, and the blue is what is existing. Sorry, do you mind going back for a second? So we just updated it so that way it's a little more consistent, it's a little more easier to follow. I can't even tell you what this means. Nobody understands where this line came from, but it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So we just tried to streamline it in terms of where development should be concentrated. And then these are the identified secondary plan areas. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to discuss the zoning bylaw.
Your Worship, members of council and members of the public, to those that are here on behalf of the topic, I'm sorry my back's to you, but I'm happy to be looking at council for the next two and a half hours. I'll try to be quick with my comments. To explain, the official plan policies provide, as Diana said, an overarching policy framework which guides future land use and development. The zoning bylaw is used as the tool to implement the intent of policy. This is where the rubber really starts meeting the road. This is where we start talking about individual land uses and parking requirements and driveway widths and a lot. So we did consider your current zoning bylaw in light of the recommended provincial, the official plan policy update, and in light of the mature neighborhood study. So the first slide happens to show mapping. I just quickly wanted to, mapping's an important tool. The public looks at maps and relies on, the development industry relies on maps. Your current zoning bylaw has 42 zoning maps. The proposed zoning bylaw is 14. Much easier to read, much easier to follow, and much easier when you're having staff updating mappings. It's much simpler. So that's one outcome. We also considered, and you heard earlier Diana reference intensification within the core area, and the core area is essentially your downtown, and we've proposed to expand those boundaries in the official plan, anticipating potential future growth. As you read the opportunities today through zoning, the language, the zoning regulatory framework is rather restrictive and is actually contrary to the provincial policy and the growth plan in terms of density opportunities. So we've actually recommended creating organizing your zoning, your standard residential districts, 4 zoning districts. So an R1, an R2, an R3, and an R4. The R4 zone today doesn't exist, and it would be the zone that would be anticipating a higher density land use. And we have identified, we've organized some of the land uses by category, existing and proposed. Again, it's streamlining. These are not quantum changes, just organizing, streamlining the intent of those districts. If we can move to the next screen, R3, you'll notice that we identify particular types of housing. You're going to see a term in our zoning descriptors that speaks to shared housing. That's a term that the province is requiring that we use. It will ultimately replace group home. Your municipality will be obliged under a separate exercise to remove reference to things to group home. It's now called share housing. And we'll flip to the 4th screen. So today, the R4 zone does not exist. And in light of the need and necessity to achieve and accommodate intensification within your built boundary, within the core area, primarily and to a lesser extent to the central area, it was appropriate to establish through this process a new zoning district. That doesn't exist, but if the development community wanted to proceed with an apartment dwelling somewhere in those areas, this would be the zoning district that could be employed. So for the community's perspective, doesn't mean that suddenly this development happens. It means you've developed a resource that they can use for land use approval purposes. Next screen. So the next screen, for your benefit, and again, I apologize for the font. For the members of the public, if you want, this document will be available online as a PDF document. You can read from that. What this is starting to do is identify the regulations of your 4 residential zones. In terms of the regulations, there has not been much in the way of change in the R1 zone, so the setbacks from the backyards, the front yards, the side yards remain the same. We have had to correct a few policy provisions that just simply didn't make sense in that language. We also have referenced where structures are in the event it's in proximity to an environmental protection zone. Our next chart speaks to the R2 zone, and it shows the different regulations for the different types of units: single detached, semi-detached, and duplex. Those are the 3 types of land uses permitted in the R2 zone. We can go to the next screen, the R3. Similarly, we show on the left side of my left, the existing regulations, and then to the proposed, we speak to a triplex dwelling, we speak to a 4-plex dwelling, we speak to a boarding or lodging house, we also speak to a nursing or retirement home. So these are uses that are essentially permitted. Now you'll notice in the R3 today you're permitted an apartment dwelling. It's the only one, but we've actually created a district, an R4 zone, and you'll see that on the next screen. And then that is the zoning district that speaks to land uses, including apartment dwellings and road dwellings. And that's your zone that's intended to accommodate to the fullest extent possible residential intensification. Again, it's a zone that doesn't exist, but we've developed and recommended a tool for you. If we proceed to the next screen, the regulations are speaking to additional dwelling units. Now, Diana, in her earlier remarks, your worship, members of council, spoke to, I happen to have I live in part of Peterborough. There's a train that travels through my backyard, so I think I'm sometimes at home when I hear that. The additional dwelling units and affordable housing, we're taking language that's being directed at us through provincial policy and incorporating it within the zoning bylaw to the extent possible. We're also acknowledging that the county's in the midst of an affordable housing strategy, which could ultimately cause or create a need to review specific policies residential within your plan, but nothing we're recommending would be running contrary to current provincial thinking. We've also introduced some policies with respect to source water protection. We've indicated there's an overlay that certain land uses are not permitted from a zoning regulatory perspective. I think they're self-explanatory. Agricultural uses, we've indicated that there will be some other land use is permitted. And Diana remarked earlier to you about policies that are now have been established at the provincial level, which are municipalities are essentially compelled to incorporate within their planning documents. So it deals with agricultural related uses, agritourism uses, and on-farm diversified uses. In the rural uses, which is a zoning category, we've carried forward similar uses from the agricultural zone dealing with agriculture-related, agritourism, and on-farm diversified uses. Now, an interesting subject, which there is regulations being proposed regarding backyard hens. I'll allow council to review, but we've indicated, so everybody's clear, that roosters shall not be permitted. It's no longer a man's world. With respect to the parking of commercial and recreation trailers and vehicles, and I know I believe there may be somebody here this evening that has spoken at some length with Diane about this subject. We've attempted to introduce regulations that establish the size of vehicles and their setbacks on specific yards within residential properties. And most municipalities have regulations directing where larger commercial vehicles are not permitted. So to be clear, if I was somebody that had a small van and I was an electrician, that type of vehicle would otherwise be permitted. But large, tandem trucks and large dump trucks and the like, that's when we're starting to get a weight in size where this regulation would speak to about where they can and cannot be placed, if permitted at all, in residential areas. The municipality still has regulations regarding swimming pools, so we've just carried forward some language around swimming pools. If I might add, most of the municipalities I deal with, swimming pools are not regulated in the zoning bylaw at all. The only thing that's regulated in the municipality is fence enclosures, and it's done through a fence enclosure bylaw, just as an observation. But we've carried forward some regulations, and we've added some other language. Under flooding provisions, we've indicated some language some new language with respect to wave uprush. It's technical stuff. It's not recreating. It just simply carried forward some modern language and thinking. Okay, so definitions. In order for a zoning bylaw to be effective, if you say something like agricultural use, it's imperative that somewhere in your zoning bylaw you define that term. So what we've attempted to do in all of the new definitions, or all the new terms we've used, we've also identified and are recommending definitions. Some are carry forwards from provincial policy. So we're using established language, or what we've also done is looked at other municipalities, comparable sizes, and sourced what we thought was the most effective and appropriate wording for a definition. So the bylaw, to help staff, to help the CAO, the clerk, when somebody inquires, what do you mean by this? You can look at the bylaw for that definition to understand and interpret land use. And that's what the next pages, there's a full page. Now, that's it in the zoning bylaw. So the official plan has recommended some refreshments and fine-tunings. As a result of that, we in turn were directed to look at companion changes to your zoning bylaw. We've updated definitions. We've reshaped your residential districts to create 4 districts, a new district which would support residential intensification in your core area, the downtown, and to a lesser extent, the central area. Those are some of the key changes. Now, we've also suggested some additional recommendations to the municipality, and that would include I want to go to the next, if I can go to the next chart, so I want to get to the park. If we could back up, please. Sorry. Oh, no, we're going forward. I want to go the other way. That's one, that direction, not that direction, not my right, my other right. Thank you. So some of the additional recommendations, I thought I'd utilize this chart that might help, and just some studies we've recommended and have identified through this process. And this was also input provided to us through the public, through their input and our identification of the need for potential other studies as a result of our review of your official plan, your zoning bylaw, our recommendations, and that of the mature neighborhood study. We've identified a study to deal with the cultural heritage master plan, and that would be something that could be of relevance to the official, you'll see the chart, it would be of relevance to 4 topics. We have identified the need for looking at community improvement plans. That's particularly relevant for the Economic Development Officer, who I believe is here helpful in terms of downtown revitalization. It's a mechanism used to help you leverage funds from your own tax base or from the province. It's a very effective planning tool. We've also identified the need for an aggregate resource study, of which I'm sure there could be ongoing dialogue with the Ministry of Natural Resources in that regard. We've also suggested there could be an opportunity for land evaluation and area review, an employment land strategy, a natural heritage assessment, a waterfront master plan, at least its update, an archaeological assessment, and a parking study. Now, the parking study, if we could hop, I want to speak briefly to the secondary plans arising from the mature neighborhood study and then arising from our official plan amendment was the recognition that your urban area, and we've not recommended that the boundary of the municipal settlement area change. In fact, you can't change it. I'm sure Mr. Campbell, who's here from the county planner, would tell us it's not something you can easily change. And you can't expand it and change it until you demonstrate certain levels of growth, and you're not in that position yet. But within your municipal settlement boundary, we've identified a core area, a central area, and an urban area. And on this overhead screen, we've also identified and recommended the opportunity for 3 secondary planning areas. And they have different characteristics. You'll notice they're outside of the built boundary portion. And if you took those 3 areas together and combined them, they pretty well represent the equivalent area of your built portion of the middle part of your community. They're very large, underdeveloped, and I would describe them as sort of inefficiently used lands currently. Secondary plans are an opportunity for council, the community, and the public to create long-range views and visions for those 3 secondary plans, which would help council, which would help your Parks and Recreation Director, your Finance Director, and others think about infrastructure, parks, the next arena, a fire hall, and that all could form part of your secondary plan exercise. If we could go to the next study, the next screen. So the parking study, we've identified that we're recommending 3 sub-areas within your community, the core, the central, and the urban area, and that it would be appropriate to review your parking requirements. Most municipalities, based upon this sub-area designation approach, would have for example, the suburbs or the urban area would have the highest parking requirement. Central area would be roughly 3/4, and the downtown would be more relaxed because there's other options available to you. We haven't suggested what those rates would be. We've identified you should consider undertaking a parking study. Whew.
I guess it's back to me through you, Your Worship. Thank you. The final portion of this is just to identify the public consultation strategy in which we undertook. This involved various forms of media, whether it was social media, mail-outs, through the municipality's website, which has actually been a great resource in terms of posting the information. So in terms of public consultation, I've already described the neighborhood walk, so those were just some pictures demonstrating what we did that day. This is the first public open house, which introduced the official plan and zoning bylaw review update and the opportunity to garner feedback from the public. This was our second open house, and the second and third open house discussed all 3 projects with respect to the mature neighborhood study, the official plan and zoning bylaw updates, and then our final open house, which was last Monday. And so in terms of next steps, so now that we have prepared these final recommendations and there's opportunity for the public and for council and for municipal staff to digest the information that we've proposed today, we have a consultation report which will be our final reporting, and that will summarize the entire community engagement program that we undertook throughout the duration of this project. Then following that, we will have the finalized reports with respect to the official plan and zoning bylaw. And what this means is that it's the red line revisions of those documents. So you're actually going to see the final zoning bylaw and final official plan and the changes that we made and how we've updated those 2 documents. Our next presentation is to council, sorry Patrick, if you could go back, is December 2nd. At this point, we would be looking for adoption of the official plan from municipal council and approval of the zoning bylaw from municipal council. And then, of course, because County of Northumberland is the approval authority for the official plan, we would then send it off to the county for approval, which I believe they have 180 days under the Planning Act for review and comment time. And that is the end of our summary update. And if you have any questions, we welcome them now.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask if there are persons present who have questions or comments with regard to the comprehensive zoning bylaw updates and official plan updates. Everyone awake? We're good? I'll ask if there are any questions from members of council. Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Your Worship, Chair. On the second plans, the land that's unused, here, this is a chance for this council or the council to set up the subdivision, how it would be built, stormwater, water, the streets, the parking, the parks, the walking trails. So that if a developer would come to go in those areas, he would have to follow that master plan. Today, the way it's going is piecemealing. Somebody's got 30 acres, 20 acres, 2 acres or 5 acres that want to develop. They do it in piecemeal. This way, it would be done as one complete unit. Can you answer?
Your Worship, through to Councillor LeBlanc, his summary is bang on. That the secondary plans need to be interpreted and understood by council and the public is not a deterrent to growth, but as an opportunity to structure and organize future growth on a comprehensive basis. So if you would imagine we'll call it the Northwest Secondary Plan, and if there's a certain process that's followed. Certainly it could involve a similar public engagement. And this community is to be congratulated, by the way, on their public consultation engagement. It's been a nice change. That study then informs the development community, informs council, informs the public and the investment community about what can happen on a long-range basis in a coordinated manner. So it's not done in a fragmented basis, it's done comprehensively. So the notion of services not for one subdivision, but services for the whole secondary plan could be contemplated and thought out in advance. And it's a more productive and efficient way of organizing what are the lands, the large assembly of underdeveloped lands on your city's periphery, municipality's periphery, in a more organized and efficient manner. It's a tool used regularly by towns and municipalities across Canada, North America, and it's very effective. And it does provide I think you have an economic development officer promoting your community. Imagine the opportunity of promoting Brighton, having these secondary plan areas to others that are wanting to invest in your marketplace, and they could look at an entire secondary or 3 secondary plan areas at the same time. That's what we're really suggesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. You said we weren't in a position at this time to change the urban boundary lines. Are you talking about numbers, so population, or is there more to it before you can even think about changing?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Tadman? Yes, thank you. So there's the municipality, the urban area. There's also rural, but I'm going to speak to the urban area, has an established settlement boundary. We are not recommending that boundary change in any fashion. If we were to have recommended same, it's a very involved and complicated process involving a comprehensive review of all growth throughout the county. And you have to justify that within your Brighton urban settlement boundary that you have optimized your development. There's no lands left. And when you consider some of the maps we presented, that there is still opportunity. What we've attempted to do is organize that. Now, what we've also done is suggested that there's intensification opportunities within your community, so the core could be more densely developed than would be the suburban areas. Those are 2 important principles, if that helps. And we've also identified that the province and even the county have identified for your urban settlement area an intensification and targets of 42%. And in order to achieve that target, we had to find a way of structuring and organizing your urban settlement area, the area that has urban services, in a manner that it could reach those targets in keeping with provincial policies, in keeping with the flavor and nature of Brighton, respectful of neighborhood and other factors. And that's what we've attempted to do. Boundaries the same. We just organize how you could achieve intensification targets.
I'm going to go over the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And I was happy to read through this, and sometimes taxpayers don't like it when we spend money on studies, but we're growing in leaps and bounds, and this provides us with some really good guidelines for how to grow going forward. My question is actually for Diana. When you're talking about the mature neighborhood study, you had mentioned the need for a Heritage Advisory Committee. We already have one in place. So I was just curious why you had mentioned the need to develop one, but we do have one. And although they are actually starting to talk to people again about listing or designating homes. So I was curious why it was on there in that way.
Through you, Your Worship. So to clarify that comment, we received feedback with respect to the advisory committee and not having enough public participation, and really that's up to the public. So if there's an opportunity to be on the committee, then they really should come forward and voice their opportunities in order to join that. So really it was based on the feedback that we were receiving. So yes, of course, there's already advisory committee, and we're expressing the comments and the sentiments of the public to say that they would like to have more of a voice and would like to start getting out there to ensure that as development is coming within the municipality's urban area, that this is the time now to start to make sure that you're protecting your designated or your potential designated areas that currently don't have that status, to ensure that extra protection policies are applied.
Thank you. Councillor Cadman.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you just clarify, you threw out the percentage, 46%? What was it, 42? Sorry.
Yes, through you, Your Worship.
Explain that to all of us.
So under the growth plan of the Greater Golden Horseshoe, pardon me, there are intensification targets in which each municipality has to establish. The county is the upper tier, so their official plan has to look at all of its member municipalities and allocate growth accordingly to those municipalities. So based on the county's official plan, Brighton has an intensification target of 42% that it has to meet prior to thinking about expanding its boundaries. So before you can start even developing outside of your built boundary into your greenfield areas, you have to achieve that 42%.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson.
Good presentation, folks. Kevin, can you explain that secondary zone, where we can be taking some steps to move on that? It sounds like an interesting proposal.
Certainly, Your Worship, to Councillor Anderson. Sorry for speaking through the podium.
I can hear you.
It would be the recommendation or identification of secondary plans will still require council's formal adoption, would still be subject to public comment and appeal, and also subject to the county's review because it forms part of an official plan amendment update. I would suggest to the municipality following that outcome that that you have procedures about how you try to attract professionals to carry out studies. I would recommend, though, to you, Diana and I have had this discussion earlier today with your committees. You've really established a good program of steering committees involving councillors and public, and a good platform from which you consulted the public using your municipality's website, other resources. If you incorporate some of those results, then you could potentially undertake the studies. I'd also suggest, if I could, if you're going to do I would recommend consider doing all three at the same time, buy in bulk. And you might identify that there's three sub-areas. You might have like subcommittees focusing because they have different components. And then conceivably council and the community consider the results of all three together in a comprehensive manner. But I believe you're going to have to wait the outcome of the recommended official plan amendment because the secondary plans form part of that structured amendment.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Do either of you have any final comments?
Other than the fact that this has been a really great project for us, you know, we took a couple of documents and found inconsistencies and found an opportunity where we could try and recreate something great, try to reorganize something in terms of how development can continue or start and then continue in that manner. It's been a lot of fun. Communicating with the public. It's been a great turnout. People have been really great in terms of responding, ensuring that their voices are being heard. There's a lot of site-specific cases, but of course, everyone's concerned about their own property, but we're really appreciative of the public coming out and speaking their voice and participating in this process. And of course, to the council members on the steering committee, it's been a good process for us.
Thank you. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the comments from the statutory public meeting November 4th. You did? Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Come forward, Rod. Just push the purple button in front of you there. There you go.
Yeah. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and staff. I have some questions here, if you have a few moments. I was wondering, I didn't hear any comments regarding the, because you mentioned that development is going to be going towards the
Rod, could you please speak into the microphone? Thank you.
You mentioned that development is going to be going towards the downtown areas, which are serviced by sewage and water, the water of which comes from the township or the outside of the town. But anyway, what are the per person sewage requirements in the official plan, and how does that compare with the population densities that you're proposing and the population densities you have right now? What are the capabilities of the sewage handling facilities right now that you're proposing increasing the load on?
Do you have those answers?
Through you, Your Worship, we don't have the numbers. However, if I believe I understand your question correctly, you're relating the proposed increased densities to how it's going to be serviced in the future.
Well,
am I correct?
Well, actually, it's a two-part question. What are you? I would assume that you've.
Rod, could you please speak into the microphone?
I would assume that you've done you've already done quite a bit of study here. I would assume that you've incorporated sewage treatment facilities, the adequacy of our treatment facilities here as part of your study, because it would be pretty important to make sure that where you're proposing development has proper sewage handling, because I know from experience that most of the municipalities in the province are very low and behind, and they're not up to date. So what have you proposed to go along with that, please?
Through you, Your Worship, that type of study was not part of the scope of work. So under the scope of work, we're bringing the official plan and zoning bylaw into conformity with the current 2014 provincial policy statement, the 2019 growth plan, as well as the 2016 county official plan. So in terms of capacity for sewage and water, that is something to be considered under something like a municipal comprehensive review, where the resources are available and the engineers are available in order to determine that if increases in development are happening, how are you going to service it? So we're currently just organizing.
You're saying that you don't have...
Rod, let her answer the question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Simply at this moment, we're organizing development to ensure that we're able to meet provincial policies in terms of intensification opportunities, that the municipality can achieve their density targets. So it's not specific development, it's just organizing development. So on a case-by-case basis, as applications are submitted for development, that would be the appropriate time in order to determine if there's capacity in the existing system to service those developments. However, as part of a municipal comprehensive review, there's an opportunity also to do a master study to determine what the existing capacity is, what the future capacity could be, and as well as opportunities to extend that capacity in the servicing in the future. Yep.
So Your Worship, if I might, to the Speaker, the secondary plans that have been identified in the recommended official plan, one of the typical matters that are addressed through secondary plans is the adequacy and capacity of municipal services. So as part of that study, you address things like water, municipal wastewater, stormwater, roads, and the like. So that's all considered at the forefront of that exercise, so you ensure that adequate facilities are in place for future development.
So if I may, thank you, Your Worship. So I would assume then, since those studies have not been done to date, that you would be putting on hold any increase in development. Is that correct? Because without it, you're contributing to the pollution of Lake Ontario.
Your Worship, the recommended updates, amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw would not preclude development from occurring in the municipality. The developments will have to demonstrate currently their individual capability of being served, if it's in the municipal boundary, their capability of being serviced by either existing or, if required, expanded municipal infrastructure. Similarly, if development is contemplated in the hamlet areas, they have to demonstrate the adequacy of private services. If the secondary plan recommendation is received, it would have the effect of saying within those study areas, for the time till those studies are done, larger, like a plan of subdivision, would not be able to proceed in those secondary plan areas until the secondary plan is completed.
If I may, Your Worship, there is an item, a very restrictive item to development in the rural areas, which relates to the fact that I think if I understand it correctly, if a lot is a lot of record since 2001, that no further development is being proposed, but I don't know whether I have it completely correct. But regardless, it sounds like an extremely restrictive policy that I'm sure that nobody in the country really wants, maybe one or two, but if I was hoping that the council might consider removing or altering that policy, because you know what it does to the value of Pearson's property in the country. Just as the imposition of the wetlands on a piece of property that some families own for 100 years, and they're basing their retirement on it, and their family's future. And along comes somebody from Toronto, generally, and says, no, you can't. You can no longer develop your property. In fact, you can't even use that area over there anymore. So that policy, I wonder if the engineering firm here has made any arrangements to financially compensate the landowners which are severely affected by that.
I think the answer to that is no, but I'll let the consultant answer the question.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, Mr. McLean and I have discussed this before at the open houses, and it is an unpopular policy, however, it is provincial policy that we direct development towards the settlement areas and outside of the rural areas, one, and agricultural areas. One, because it creates incompatible development with respect to agricultural operations. Two, if you start scattering development within your rural areas, then you're putting an increase in demand on your infrastructure with respect to roads, with respect to garbage, recycling, school bus routes. So you have to extend your services out in order to bring people in. So it's just an inefficient use of land and infrastructure and resources. And through provincial policy, you actually can't remove that because you are supposed to limit the amount of development that is permitted in rural areas. And I will add to that Brighton has probably the highest number of permitted severances in the rural areas. And because it's coming from the county, we would have proposed to reduce it, but we can't. So there's still opportunities to have quite a few lots, which is 3 in the rural areas, which in most municipalities, you're allowed none.
And just as a reminder to council and the community, we did get a rather strongly worded letter from our friends at the province when we did permit a severance in the last term. They didn't reverse our decision, but I think they might have thought about it.
Your Worship, may I ask when you received that?
It was last term.
It was last term.
It was the last term of council. I don't recall.
Yeah, that figures. Also, as you'll notice, the same people that probably are rather from the same source that issued that reprimand, you might say, are the same people that develop land all around Toronto and Brampton and some of the best land absolutely in the world that's going under subdivisions and buildings. And they come down here and they tell us and some of this sandy, rocky land that, no, you can't do anything. So we're getting pretty tired of it here. And there's less and less. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to take up too much more time. But I really feel that the sewage item issue needs to be dealt with. I know this council is very conscious of the environment and wants to protect it. And so I had some other things, Your Worship, but I appreciate the time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. So before I read the motion, I will just reiterate one more time. If anyone has any questions or comments from the public, I'll give you one more chance here before I read the motion. Very well. I have a motion. I've already read it, but I'm going to read it again. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, second by Councillor Anderson, that Council receives the comments from the statutory public meeting November 4th, 2019, concerning the proposed new comprehensive zoning bylaw and official plan. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. Now I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council move out of the statutory public meeting November 4th, 2019 at 8:13 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Now we move into delegations. Thank you very much. Our first delegation is from the Alzheimer's Society. It's Maureen Corrigan and Angela Miraw. Did I get it right? Yeah. I'll ask you to come forward for your delegation.
Thank you for having us, Your Worship, Council. I'm Angela Miraw, and this is our Executive Director, Maureen Corrigan. She's going to be Vanna White tonight. So we're requesting that Brighton Council approve the recommendation from the Police Services Board for the Project Lifesaver pilot for Brighton. As mentioned at a previous council meeting, community policing would be asked to lead the fundraising efforts for this. A presentation to the Municipality of Brighton Accessibility Advisory Committee, September 13th, by the Alzheimer's Society of Hastings Prince Edward, resulted in that committee supporting, in principle, a pilot project of Project Lifesaver International in the Municipality of Brighton. The amount required to fundraise for the pilot is $13,968. That's based on pricing and the USD exchange rate as of September 2019. Project Lifesaver Maureen has a bracelet here, as well as some brochures to hand out. It's part of our Finding Your Way program, which helps those living with dementia, their families, caregivers, and the communities to recognize the risk of going missing, to be prepared for incidents of going missing, and to ensure that people living with dementia can live safely in the community. 60% of those living with dementia will go missing at some point, often more than once. 50% of those not found within 24 hours face serious injury or death. Project Lifesaver is a locating technology that was chosen based on its ability to locate someone in situations where cellular signal may be lost, such as dense bush, culverts, etc. The Alzheimer's Society of Hastings Prince Edward administers the program, which is available to those at risk of wandering, including those living with memory loss, autism, and Down syndrome. We have MOUs with the OPP in Bancroft, Central Hastings, Quinte West, Prince Edward County, and Belleville Police Service, who conduct the search should someone go missing. This is a tool that can be used in addition to their existing search and rescue protocol. We currently have 28 registered clients using Project Lifesaver, and since 2015, there have been 3 successful Project Lifesaver searches in our area. An eligible client wears the bracelet that you're seeing in front of you. A profile is completed by the Alzheimer's Society, including a picture and an individual transmitter number, which is sent to police for them to add to their local databases in the event that a 911 call is made stating the person has gone missing. The Alzheimer's Society staff change batteries in the transmitter every 60 days. This is either done in-home or in office. The cost to the client is $400. That covers admin and lease fee, plus $20 for battery changes bi-monthly. The Alzheimer's Society of Hastings Prince Edward works with clients on an individual basis to ensure that finances are never a barrier to this program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have are you both done? Yeah. So I'll open the floor to members of council to ask questions of clarification. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. At the beginning of your comment, you said you are trying to raise $13,000. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
That has to be raised locally?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Well.
Councillor Tadman.
Not a question, just fully support this. And when you see the statistics that 15% of Canadians aged 65 years and older will live with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, I mean, this is very important. And we have, in our own municipality, lost a gentleman because he wasn't found in time and he wandered. And this can happen to any one of our family members or us personally. As I get joked around the table that I'm the senior on the block, but that's okay too, because I can still shoot back some remarks to them.
Yes, she can. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Any other nice comments from members of council? I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, and just to let you know, we have supported both the recommendation through the Accessibility Committee and the Police Services Board, so council's on board with this 100%. Motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive the delegation from Maureen Corrigan and Angela Mira regarding the Project Lifesaver pilot program. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Our second delegation is Paula Mason, our physician recruiter. Paula?
I sent a slideshow in. Do you have the slideshow? No? No? Sorry?
You sent it to Candace?
To Candace,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Council does have the presentation.
Okay, you have it in front of you?
In our
Okay.
package. It just isn't available for the members of the public, so.
That's fine.
We'll apologize for that.
We'll wing it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. A little bit of background for those perhaps behind me that aren't aware on the physician recruitment program. It was in August of 2017 that the City of Quinte West and the Trent Memorial Hospital Foundation joined forces to recruit and retain family doctors for the community. I began this role on a full-time basis in March of 2018, so about a year and a half ago. At that point in time, doctor shortage in the community was a result of a fast-growing and aging population, as well as a growing military population. This is combined by retiring doctors. So doctors that are retiring nowadays actually need to be replaced on at least a 2-to-1 basis. So an existing doctor that's been around for a few years probably has 2,000 patients, some 3,000 patients, and I've heard of some even a little higher than that. When those doctors retire these days, we don't find doctors to take over that full practice. They're coming out of med school and out of residency programs and looking for practices of anywhere between 800 and 1,000 patients. So typically for every physician that retires, we are looking for at least 2 to replace them. The municipality of Brighton joined our program this past summer. Happy to have the ability now to promote this community to the different physicians and things that I'm talking to, students that I'm talking to. We look at the recruitment pipeline. So this is a pipeline of prospective physicians at various levels of their education. So currently this pipeline goes up and down. It just depends on where we're at. Right now we have 72 candidates in that pipeline, and this is updated regularly. These are students anywhere from high school right up to physicians that are already practicing. So we're looking at about 9 students right now in high school who've told us, yes, I'm going to be a doctor one day. We have 11 students that are in an undergraduate program at a university looking to go into med school next. We have 17 students in med school. That's a 4-year program for them. At that point, they go on to their residency, and we've got another 17 in the residency stages, anywhere from 1 to 4 years there. And we've got 15 current practicing physicians on that list of people that we're working with, and 3 international medical grads. So these are students that have done their medical school training outside of Canada and are in the process of trying to get into a residency program back within Canada. When we're looking at recruiting doctors, typically there's 4 places that these doctors are going to come from. 25% are leads from existing physicians. 25% are typically have been in our system, in our system in terms as a learner, so they've been either at a clinic or at the hospital working beside other doctors in the community. 25% will be homegrown, so that'll be local students that we find out that are going to hope to go to medical school one day. And 25% will be the random leads that we come up with when we're at the different career fairs and through social media, that sort of thing. But the most important thing I can tell you today is that recruitment is not a quick process. Typically, it's an 18 to 24-month process to sign a physician, and that's in an urban center. So it takes a little longer even in a rural center. So it's not something that happens overnight. Having said that, we have a plan in place. We are working diligently on the recruitment situation within Trenton and Brighton. And to this means career fairs. We're attending the career fairs at all of the different medical schools. So the University of Toronto, University of Western Ontario, McMaster, University of Ottawa. They all have a career fair day where we actually go and are in front of 50 to 100 residents that are going to be looking for a job. So these career fairs are one of the most important things that we do. We have different retention events as well. So as I said at the beginning, we're not only looking to recruit doctors, we're looking to retain the ones we have through different measures. A few things that we're tracking, keeping close eye on, the number of doctors and med students that we have through the community on tours. So we want to know how many of those we're having. We want to know how many learners are in the community. So actually, Those are our med students and our residents, whether they're in a family medicine clinic working with another doctor, whether they're in the ER department doing training there. We want to keep increasing the number of learners that we have in our community. And since 2015, 2016, we've actually doubled the numbers. So we are, the more students we can get through the area and show them the area, then the better chance we have to retain them in the future. When we look at the objectives of the physician recruitment program, when we started back in 2017, our original objectives, one was to create a communication tool to start communicating with these prospective physicians that are in our pipeline. And we've done that by way of an electronic newsletter that goes out once a month. And we're currently sitting at about 611 people that get that newsletter. So that's students and physicians that we've met at the different events that we've gone to and collected names and email addresses, as well as any of our local physicians, and anybody from the community can actually sign up for our newsletter on our website. We wanted to have a database of prospects, and as I talked at the beginning, we've got a pipeline of 72. We wanted more learners in the community. So yes, as I said, 23 in 2016, 2017 versus 40 this past year. So we've almost doubled the learners in our community. We wanted to create a physician community through the retention, so we're doing things like holiday parties. We have a summer party, summer social event. We have a winter event where we take the docs to the a Sens box or a suite at the Sens game in Belleville. And we hold an annual doctor's dinner in May, so we're working on different events, social events, to bring them together, to make them feel like they're part of a community. We wanted to recruit a new doctor. We did that 5 times in 12 months, so we felt like we had a really good start there. We wanted an accommodation for our learners, so we were able to lease an apartment with a local builder at home in Trenton was able to lease us an apartment. As well, we also have a couple different billets within the communities that these learners can stay with. We want to increase awareness of our communities, and that was done through an article in the Medical Post where we were named as one of the top 7 physician-friendliest small towns in Canada. We wanted to create partners within the community, so with Brighton, with the military. We're working with the Military Family Services right now in trying to make our doctors understand the unique situation that these military families are in. So these are families that are going from one province to another, and each time they hit a new province, they have to go back on a doctor's waiting list. So they're going from one wait list to another wait list to another wait list, and having a really hard time ever getting to the top of a wait list before they get transferred to their new post. So I've been working hard with them as well. The final original objective that we had was a new medical office building, and that is now something that is in the works as we are working with Stakos Developments in Trenton on Stakos Commons, which will be a multi-use development, and the first building in it will be a medical office for physicians. So we will have some extra room available shortly for that. Second last in the package, the current challenge here in Brighton. So obviously we're all aware that we have a physician challenge here in Brighton with 1 physician vacating in December and 2 more in the spring. What have we done? Well, we've created ads for these practice opportunities, posted them widely through industry websites and publications. We've spread the word at medical schools. We've spread the word through the newsletter. We've spread the word through social media channels. We've invited a couple of these physicians to attend these career fairs with us where they can actually speak to the residents themselves. So they've been exposed to 300 or 400 residents to tell them directly about their opportunities available. We've also reached out to all of the learners who've spent time in this community over the past 5 years. So we went back to everybody that was here on a rotation as a medical student or a resident and just basically said, here's an opportunity. You've been in the community, you know what it's like, and share the different opportunities with them. We've provided the doctors with 3 leads of 3 different physicians that have contacted us through the job ads from other parts of the province for follow-up. Finally, on the last page, how can you help us? We want to know if you know more students that are interested in medical school. We want to put them on our prospect list. If you, to that end, if you know any physicians interested, obviously, in relocating to our communities, we want to know about them, and we'll contact them. We'd love to be connected with some local businesses. So when we have students in your community that are training at the Brighton Health Services Centre, we like to give them a welcome package. With community information, maps, directories, guides. It would be nice if we had some restaurant gift cards or passes for the YMCA, that sort of thing. Just little local things we could add to the package. So if anyone has any connections that way, we'd love to hear from you. As well as subsidies for physician locums. So physician locum, if you're not aware, is a physician coming in almost like a supply teacher, so covering for a doctor that may be on vacation or maybe ill, maybe on a mat leave, that sort of thing. A lot of the doctors don't want to hire a locum because it actually comes out of their pockets. So a lot of the doctors, you'll find if they're on vacation, they just close the door, they're on vacation. But a lot of these new residents that we're meeting at the med schools, they want to try the communities out. They want to try a locum position before they actually commit to taking on a full practice. So we need to create more opportunities for these learners to come into the community and to do a locum practice. And if we had a little bit of support in terms of subsidies for the physicians so that they didn't have to pay the whole thing themselves, I think they might be more apt to open up to that idea. Those are just a few ways when people ask how they can help the program that we have to share. I think that covers the slides that you had. Again, I apologize that we don't have them on the screen, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Paula. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Not really a question. You touched on when military go from province to province, and one thing a lot of people, especially for this area or any area that's a military town, when they leave the military, they face the same problem, because in the military you can't de-roster from a doctor and add your name to a list until the day that you're out of the military. So when you're in a community like Brighton or any other place, they have a doctor in the military. If there's a doctor that has a list that goes up, you can't go on that list because you're still in the military, even though you know when your date is to get out. So that compounds the problem in areas like this.
Very true.
And if I could have a follow-up, the one thing I was going to ask, Docs by the Bay, is it just simply recruitment, or do you have a group that advocates for provincial legislative change to help? Because part of the problem is the number of doctors going into university. And is there anybody advocating to have that change so there's more going in so we can have more coming out?
Not necessarily from our committee perspective at this point. I do belong to an association of physician recruiters across Canada, and that is something that the actual association is looking into themselves, so as a larger group.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Anderson?
Hi. It's still hard to believe that our provincial government isn't taking more of an active role in this doctor recruitment. Like Toronto, the large centers have the same problem, but it's compounded 10 times. They don't have doctors, but to bring doctors from out of those communities to an area like this should be rather, I would think, easy, in as much as they don't have all that urban thing to deal with. People are moving to these areas because of the amenities that we have and the quietness that we have and all that. And yes, we have a lot of patients here. We have a lot of seniors that need assistance. But I just don't get that there's not. It seems like municipalities, people like yourself. I know you work darn hard, Paul. I've seen what you do. And Quinte West, I give them credit for what's going on there with the new medical center. But new medical centers, and we have a nice new medical center too, and we need to fill the the beds in there, or have people taking care of those people. So for us to be constantly dwelling on bringing people down and whining and dining them, it seems something that we're going to be doing forever if something doesn't happen. Like Councillor Bateman made a suggestion there, I think there's got to be something going on a little further up the post here, and I haven't heard them talking about it very much. So is it something that government wants to stay away from, other than making it tougher to be a doctor? Because I hear that all the time. Can you answer that?
I can't really speak for the government and what they want.
Sorry.
What they want to do or what they're going to do.
But in your circle, you must hear it all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And you must hear it from the doctors too, because what are the doctors saying? Why are they, I know why they're leaving. I don't have an issue with why somebody wants to move, change occupations, whatever. But why, what is it that we need to know that in Brighton or even in the whole area, because the area is what's important here, because we're willing to drive to Trenton for our doctor, what is it we're missing? What is it to attract the doctors here? It's not, is it just money?
No, it's not even money. It's like you said in the beginning, we're in the same situation as hundreds of other communities in Canada and in Ontario in particular. When I go to the med schools, to the different recruitment events, it's me and the same 6 or 8 other recruiters, and we're all at the same ones, and we're all looking for the same people. So it's just trying to stand out, like you say, it's a beautiful community, and we have, lots of people that want to retire here, and it's just a matter of finding the right person.
And can I just touch on one other thing that
Sure.
Councillor Bateman said, that doctors, I think you touched on this, was about the doctors that are highly skilled, that want to move here, want to come here from out of the country, that want to practice here. We almost make it, not we, but the situation is that they almost make it so difficult for them to ever become a doctor here, because they should be qualified and certified and all that, but I think they're making it pretty tough for them to do that.
They do have to jump through a lot of hoops, that's for sure.
And and I think there's a lot of, probably outside of our country, which is a rather small country, there must be a lot of potential opportunities to have doctors come from elsewhere.
Absolutely.
I would want to make sure that they're qualified.
Well, and that's why.
So I'm not the one to judge
because,
that, but anyhow.
The level of training in a lot of countries wouldn't be comparable to the level of training in North America. So that's.
But if you take somebody out of university, 20 years, 25, they still have time to become a learner.
Sure.
Learn more our ways, or whatever the term is.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive the delegation from Paula Mason, Physician Recruitment and Retention Coordinator. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And our third and final delegation is from Heather Ratz, Chief Executive Officer of the Brighton Public Library. Hello again, Heather.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I promise this will be quick and easy, because frankly, it's almost past my bedtime. So thank you again for having me here tonight. This is the first time that the Brighton Public Library has been in front of this council. So we want to say thank you to the municipality of Brighton for giving us this new resource of the new and expanded library space. I'm just here to tell you a very brief story about what we've been able to achieve in our first year in our new space. October 15th, 2019 was our first year anniversary. It has been an eventful year full of firsts as we continue to grow into our space and discover new opportunities. In the first year, we have been able to accomplish the following. We have a new meeting space. So in addition to our weekly storytime and craft programs, we were able to host 41 special library events, including a March break magic show with 194 people in attendance. So in our previous space, that would not have been possible and would not have been allowed, probably. In addition, we also hosted 177 non-library groups. These included Probus groups, rowdy bridge players, and other community initiatives. However, we are not only a meeting space. We have 2 service points that we affectionately call the pod and the mothership that allow us to provide efficient and personable library service to everyone that comes through our doors. So from October 15th, 2018 to October 15th, 2019, we checked out 86,811 items from our physical collection. This includes ukuleles and Ontario Parks passes that are new to our collection. So what I'm thinking is, if council would like to consider forming a band, we can provide the space, the instruments, and perhaps some backup singers. No promises, though. You could also sign out the park pass and we can just set you off into nature where you can practice till your heart's content. In terms of e-resources, we had 15,585 checkouts of e-books and e-audiobooks from our Overdrive site. And interlibrary loans, for those of you that aren't familiar with this service, it's a reciprocal borrowing service that allows us to use other library items throughout the province, and we also lend items to them. So in the 1 year, we shipped out 1,424 items to other libraries, and we received 1,733 items in return for our own patrons. I just want to point out that the interlibrary loan is an integral part of our service that we continue to provide despite cuts from the province that saw our delivery service being terminated. And now we have to rely on and pay for Canada Post to have those items sent to other libraries. In addition to our well-rounded collection that speaks to the needs of the community, we also have plenty of soft seating, study tables, and areas to plug in and power up. We recently received glowing feedback from 2 people who have been using our harvest tables on a regular basis, as they were working on blueprints for a hospital and needed space to spread out. Some other feedback we have received on our comment cards includes, "We love the new space, it's very inviting, it was worth the wait," and my favorite, "Can I live here?" The answer is no. We have a fully accessible computer station that can accommodate patrons with all different abilities. The space for this was not possible in our previous location. And to help keep our rich history alive and accessible, we have a top-of-the-line digital microfilm reader that was donated to us and is dedicated in memory of a former Brighton resident. So in looking to the future, we are currently in the process of creating a new strategic plan that will align with many of the objectives of the municipal plan, with a special focus on youth services, community partnerships and involvement, and creating an even better experience for library explorers. In closing, I'm very pleased to share with you that during Ontario Public Library Week in October, the Brighton Public Library was named a shortlist nominee for the Angus Mowat Award of Excellence for our Pop-Up Library Initiative. This public service award is presented by the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, and the winners will be announced at the Ontario Public Library Super Conference Gala in January 2020. So we hope that in the new year we can bring home some new hardware. Thank you for your continued support for this vital community hub. We look forward to working with you to continue contributing to the wellness of the Brighton community. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Any questions or comments from members of council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for your service to the community.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive the delegation from Heather Ratz, Chief Executive Officer, Brighton Public Library, regarding the new library. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Move into citizens' comment. The first is from Rod McLean regarding severance and updates from the official plan, but I think Mr. McLean left. The next one is from Byron McBride speaking regarding the ice rental fees, but you've already done that? You're good? This is going very well, thank you. Oh, here it is. Brenda Richardson, Hamilton Woods Phase 2, Storm Water something Harbor Point Pond. Brenda?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, Brenda Richardson, 104 Raglan Street. I just have a few questions and points that I hope Council will consider when discussing item 9.5 on the Hamilton Woods Phase 2. First one, on page 7 of the pre-servicing agreement, it states, prior to the execution of this agreement by the municipality, the owner will have obtained approval from LTC and the municipality. When did the municipality approve the stormwater plan? I guess I missed it for Phase 2. And why is there no mention or requirement for approval from the Ministry of Environment? Van Meer presented two scenarios. Which scenario is being implemented for the stormwater plan? Scenario 1 or Scenario 2? Also, there was no mention of spring runoff in either scenario, which contributes a lot of water into the pond in the spring. There's a letter dated July 16, 2019 from Janet Noyes of the LTC, Lower Trent Conservation, page 2, item 6, and I quote, LTC recommends that the municipality of Brighton confirm that they are aware of the additional major system flows that will be conveyed to Cedar Street and Harbor Street via Marina Drive and Wallace Street as a result of the development. I'd like to know if the municipality has looked into this, considering those streets were underwater both in 2017, worse this spring, and the water levels are predicted to be higher in 2020. I'd like to know who from staff will be overseeing the work to be done on the pond, and have they been given the information and recommendations approved by this council from EUR's report regarding Harbor Point Pond. On a happier note, I am glad that the town and Toby Development has come to agreement for cleaning up Harbor Point Pond. And and many other residents and stakeholders are looking forward to finally moving forward with cleaning up of the pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that Council receive the citizens' comment from the November 4th, 2019 Council meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And so we move into staff reports. Our first report is with regard to Code of Conduct for local boards and committees. This report was prepared by the clerk, who is not here. So, Mr. Castleman, do you have anything to add or highlight with regard to this report?
My only comment is that the clerk has been going through a series of processes to develop codes of conduct for various organizations and people within our organization. So you're going to see a new code of conduct for our CBO. You're going to see a new code of conduct for our boards and committees. We've already previously seen codes of conduct for council members and staff. So this is a theme and a process that the clerk has undertaken with respect to establishing rules of conduct for various organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Castleman. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The Council receives a staff report regarding Code of Conduct for local boards and committees, and further that Council approve the recommended Code of Conduct for local boards, committees, and incorporate in the Corporation Policy Manual. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to delegated authority for temporary road closures, also provided by the clerk's office. Mr. Castleman, do you have anything to add or highlight with regard to this report?
Certainly. It came to my attention during the last council meeting where we had 3 items in front of council with respect to temporary road closings. And it's certainly been a practice of mine in different municipalities across Ontario to simply delegate that authority to our Public Works Director to close roads on a temporary basis for a variety of different events, whether they're Christmas parades or whether they're Apple Fest or the normal activities that we deal with on an annual basis. So it's simply just doing that, trying to be more efficient at the end of the day and declutter council's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Castleman. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receives the staff report regarding delegated authority for temporary road closures, and further, that council delegate authority to the Director of Public Works for the processing and approval of temporary highway closures. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Will there then be less paperwork as far as applications going through the Director of Public Works? I'm assuming we would still have to notify, right?
Mr. Castleman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The process is going to remain much the same, just that it's going to go through staff versus having to have the additional step associated with going to council. So in many respects, it's going to be more efficient and faster for the applicant.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Tadman?
Excellent idea. Let's move on.
Well, I was trying. Anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to a request to submit a funding application for the Canada Infrastructure Program. Mr. Miller, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Other than that, the program is in effect now. It closes November 12th, and obviously we'd like to put an application in to try to get some funding towards improvements to the arena.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council requests staff to submit an application to the Province of Ontario under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the replacement of the arena chiller, one dehumidifier unit, and the replacement of the north section of the parking lot at King Edward Park. Is there any discussion? Councillor Anderson.
I think it's a great idea. Let's move on.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Our next report is with regard to the use of Indigenous images and themes in the municipal sports facilities. Mr. Miller, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Not at this time. It's just the policy I brought forward from a previous report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council approves the corporate policy regarding the use of Indigenous images, themes in municipal sports facilities. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Next report is a planning report with regard to Hamilton Woods West Subdivision, Phase 2. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through the chair, in addition to the calculated letter of credit that I circulated to council earlier today via email, I'm also able to advise that the final subdivision agreement has been further massaged in terms of grading and stormwater management, given the comments received from Mr. Poole, manager of Capital Works and Infrastructure, and the massaging is intended to hopefully mitigate, if not almost eliminate, any future issues regarding drainage and subdivisions which have previously become a regular item on council's agendas.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, and I will need a seconder. The council receives the report regarding the Hamilton Woods West Subdivision Phase 2 as prepared by the municipal planning consultant. The council receives and approves the draft M plan for lands described as part of lots 1 and 2, concession 1, and part of lot 15, east of Ontario Street, registered plan 28. Otherwise attached to this report, and direct staff to sign the final plan for the purposes of registration. The council receives and approves the draft R plan as attached hereto and forming part of this report, that such plan be deposited. That council hereby grants final plan of subdivision approval of Hamilton Woods Subdivision Phase 2 under authority of Section 51, subsection 58 of the Planning Act, and that the final approved M plan be registered within 30 days of the date of approval. The council directs staff to forward the subdivision agreement to the owner-developer for execution. The council directs staff to forward the license of occupation agreement regarding the Lance Street Stormwater Management Facility to the owner-developer for execution. That council hereby enacts a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the license of occupation agreement regarding the Lance Street Stormwater Management Facility between the municipality and Gordon Toby Developments Limited. That council hereby enacts a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the subdivision agreement pertaining to Hamilton Woods Subdivision Phase 2, subsequent to the prior execution of a cost-sharing agreement between the municipality and Gordon Toby Developments pertaining to the Harbor Point Stormwater Management Facility. The council hereby enacts a bylaw having the effect of removing the holding provision on lands pertaining to the Hamilton Woods West Subdivision Phase 2. Is there a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor Anderson. Is there any discussion? So I guess I'd be curious, we heard Mrs. Richardson ask a number of questions with regard to approval authorities, and I'm wondering if we can have those questions answered. So who Mr. Castle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly between Mr. Ty and myself, we'll answer the questions once we've had a chance to review them.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Ty, for answering all my questions on this. There's only two more. One, when this subdivision, you talked about stormwater management and flooding in the spring that happened last year around a couple of houses. Is Mr. Toby's subdivision going to address all that like he said he was done by the end, which is now called Cardinal subdivision where all that flooding was taking place?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I have a direct answer to that question. However, the stormwater management has been peer-reviewed and approved by both the municipality's peer review engineer as well as Lower Trent Conservation, as well as the design of the common swale, if you will, bordering the upper limit, north limit of the Clamp subdivision. That is, as council was previously made aware, has been modified, and actually Toby is proposing to locate 2 catch basins within the Clamp subdivision to further improve drainage that isn't even on his subdivision.
Thank you. Anything further? My question really pertains to a meeting that's going to happen on Thursday from the Lower Trent, and it's my concern that, and I'm in no way wanting to hold this up, but it's my concern that the 76 meter above sea level flood, 100-year flood level was almost hit this year. We were like 75.9 or somewhere around there. If Lower Trent increases that 100-year level, which I don't know if they will or not, but it seems to me if they're telling us that they believe these high water levels are going to continue, that they're likely to increase that 100-year level, do we have the ability to go back and look at this facility in terms of what happens if the reality of what we suspect is going to happen year over year, and that's that the high water levels on the lake are going to be higher and higher?
Through you, Your Worship.
Your microphone, Mr. Ty.
Sorry. Through Your Worship, I'm not aware that that has necessarily been taken into account. However, by virtue of Lower Trent having peer reviewed and signing off on the stormwater management report and plans, one would assume that that information was available to them at that point in time, which was quite recent.
June and July, I think, when we received those letters.
Yeah.
Councillor Anderson.
You make a good point. I just wonder how long it'll be before we ever hear from all their, like this thing on Thursday is to gather information and not necessarily make decisions at that meeting. It's So when would they, we need to move on.
I suspect
And but with what we've got to move on.
I suspect that Thursday what we're going to see is what the Lower Trent intends to do with regard to flood, and not just gather information, but maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure.
It depends on how you
Councillor
read.
Cadman?
Yes, there won't be anything final on Thursday, but we're talking about shoreline here. This subdivision has nothing to do with shoreline.
Well, it doesn't, you're right, it's not on the shoreline, but the stormwater management facility notes the 76 meter above sea level maximums, and of course, the water goes into the lake, and if the lake gets too high, the lake comes into the pond, so.
I realize that, and I think I agree with Mr. Ty that Lower Trent has already considered that in their advice to go forward with this.
Very well. Anything further? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And our next report is with regard to the Harbor Point Stormwater Facility Cost Share Agreement. The report was prepared by Ms. Thompson, who's not here, but Mr. Poole or Mr. Castleman, do you have anything to add or highlight? Mr. Poole?
Through your worship, no.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the Harbor Point Pond Cost Sharing Agreement between the municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
I just want to kind of use this to back up for the last one, as far as that goes. Yes, it is.
Councillor Rowley, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is great that we're able to partner and get this all done in kind of in one job instead of having two groups going in together to do this. But back to your point regarding Lower Trent and the 76 meters, and if they go higher, it looks like the municipality will have a few bucks left over. We don't have to spend all of our money. Is there ways then at some point to just put that money away, and if we have to mitigate something somewhere or to work with this pond in order to comply with maybe 78 meters, I don't know, can we do that with the dollars that are here? Is that something that we should maybe do after speaking with Lower Trent on Thursday?
Do you have a comment?
Sure. My comment through you, Mr. Mayor, is that each year, the treasurer will come forward to council at the request of various department heads to set aside various monies that have not been spent. So Mr. Parkinson, as an example, could come forward and say, we've got a surplus of $50,000 for stormwater management. I'd like to set that aside to do something else with it. So that's a normal report that you can see from the treasurer late November, early December.
And just kind of add on to that then, if we were to say after Thursday, could we ask Mr. Parkinson then, if those monies are left over, that we could specify specifically that they go to Harbor Point Pond? Is that something that we can do in case that money's required there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the bottom line is that council can use their best judgment with respect to where they want to put the funds.
Thank you. And really the best way to solve this problem is to let more water out of the lake, but that's another issue for another day as well. 50,000 won't do that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. We'll move into notices of motion. This is a notice of motion that will come forward as a motion on the November 18th meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Mayor Ostrander, whereas the recently produced Brighton Digital Archives 2020, Brighton Then and Now 2020 calendar has proven to be so popular that the supply has already been depleted. And whereas the calendar is a beautiful compilation of Brighton's historical sites then and now, therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to authorize a second printing of 500 at a cost of approximately $2,000. This motion supports identifying heritage assets as per our strategic plan. That will come forward on the 18th. We have no unfinished business, and we move into bylaws. First is with regard to the holiday train. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize a temporary road closure for portions of various streets during the CP holiday train event in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next bylaw is with regard to an industrial park property sale. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the chief administrative officer to execute the appropriate documents and deeds to transfer title of the municipally owned property being part of Lot 33, Concession B, being parts 1 and 2 of Plan 39R 14023, Municipality of Brighton, to Phillips Formula Incorporated. Is there any discussion? What's the size of this lot? 2 acres. Thank you. Anything else? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Our next bylaw is with regard to delegated authority for temporary highway road closures. A motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to delegate the authority for the processing and approval of temporary highway closures. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? I'm going to ask again. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next bylaw is with regard to the subdivision agreement for Hamilton Woods, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments Limited regarding a plan of subdivision on a property located in part of lots 1 and 2, concession 1, part of lot 15, registered plan 28, in the municipality of Brighton in the county of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Next bylaw is with regard to the removal of the hold on Hamilton Woods, and I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 097-2015 as amended and bylaw number 140-2002 as amended, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw of the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Our next bylaw is with regard to the agreement between the municipality and Gordon Toby Developments. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments Limited regarding a license of occupation located in part of lots 1 and 2, concession 1, part of lot 15, registered plan 28, Municipality of Brighton, County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We'll move into reports of advisory committees of council, reports, minutes, and council reports. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council received the Community Events and Civic Awards Advisory Committee meeting minutes from September 10th, 2019 as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next is a recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee, moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council receives a recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee that the Grimes Brothers Barn at the corner of Cedar Street and Prince Edward Street be conserved and retained in the municipality of Brighton by whatever means possible. Is there any discussion? So we're just receiving this. We're not supporting it. Speak. Go ahead.
I don't know if it's too early to do anything more than that. I guess it's just the committee's desire to see there be some action if there was any possibility of the barn being torn down because there's a new owner. So if maybe there's something more we can do at this point, I've heard there's a desire and a group of people willing to move it if need be. So certainly there are people in this community willing to help make that happen. So I guess maybe we need, it'd be great to speak to the owner and see what their plans are.
Because I've heard the owner intends to keep the barn in its state and use it during the construction period, but that's just a rumor. Mr. Castleman, did you want to say something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well aware of the desire of the community with respect to preserving the Red Barn and or relocating the Red Barn. Rich history within this community. I get that. Certainly we've had discussions, staff have had discussions with the new owner, and my recollection is that we're meeting once again with the new owner as early as Thursday to talk about what his future plans are on what I'll call the south end of the property, the 128-unit condo development. And at that opportunity, we'll talk a little bit about the barn and what I'll call the north end of the property and what his plans are in that regard. So certainly staff are sensitized to the issue, and I think that the motion that we have here is adequate.
Councillor Anderson.
I just wanted to ask, I know it's not designated, is it listed, that barn? It's listed through the Heritage Committee? And I think this is something that was coming out of the neighborhood study as well. So these are things that we should be looking at down the road. I'm not saying the Heritage Committee, I know they do a good job and I know they think they're doing their best in that way, but those are buildings that we should be getting listed, and because once it's listed, it slows the process down a little bit too. And once it's designated, that slows it down a lot more.
Yeah. Councillor Tedman.
The recommendation at this point is just to receive. Could we not, as a council, support the Heritage Advisory Committee's recommendation?
I think we could. It may be premature, given that the property owner hasn't indicated what they intend to do.
But they've given it, it's not only, they said to be conserved and retained in the municipality, so it doesn't necessarily mean there. So I think it would be good for us to show the community that we do support.
And well, if the Deputy Mayor as the mover wants to change receive to support, and Councillor Rowley would agree as the seconder.
Total in agreement.
I could support the change as well if we removed the term by whatever means possible, because that becomes a bit, yeah, so is that, you're okay with that? Councillor Rowley, are you okay if we stroke out by whatever means possible? Because that could be very expensive. So the motion is now moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council support the recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee that the Grimes Brothers Barn at the corner of Cedar and Prince Edward Streets be conserved and retained in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receive the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the September 16th, 2019 meeting as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Bless you. motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receive the Applefest Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the August 13th, 2019 meeting as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receive the Applefest Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the September 17th, 2019 meeting as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receives the recommendation from the Accessibility Advisory Committee to paint curbs yellow in the downtown area. Is there any discussion? Councillor Tadman.
I seconded this because so many times it's been brought up that the main reason that people request the curbs to be painted yellow is for accessibility, and especially people with eyesight problems. So we've already talked to the Public Works manager of Public Works, and I think he's quite aware of it, but we just thought to get it put in here would be a good little reminder that once the sidewalks are done, it would be good to have the curbs painted.
Once they're done, indeed. Councillor Rowley.
Should we then change that receives to supports? Do we support that recommendation?
Well, sounded like that was the discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, change it again.
So you're the mover, you're wanting to change that?
Then I would, yes, I would suggest that we change receives.
Councillor Tadman, you're okay with that as the seconder?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're a good girl.
So the motion now reads, the council supports the recommendation from the Accessibility Advisory Committee to paint curbs yellow in the downtown area. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's like we're doing the wave. All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. Which two? We have no reports, minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies, so we move into correspondence. Nope, no we don't. Sorry, I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receive the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes from September 13th as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. And now we move into correspondence with a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council proclaim the month of November as Violence Against Women Prevention Month in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? So you all have these purple scarves in front of you. I have donated $20 per scarf to Cornerstone. I haven't donated it yet. They gave me the scarves. I am in debt to them now. On Thursday, I will pay my debt. So you all can have a scarf, and I'm hopeful that we can get a picture when we go into recess before we go in camera, and Mr. Campbell from The Independent has agreed to do that. With your scarves on. I have one too. Bob does not have one. No, I wasn't. I was too cheap to get Bob one. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried.
Thank you for the scarf.
You're welcome. Booking Hilton Hall for Christmas concert request. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receives or approves the request from Dan Buchanan, Chair of the Friends of Hilton Hall Heritage Centre, to book the Hilton Hall for a Christmas concert on Sunday, December 8th, 2019. I assume we're approving this. Councillors Tadman and Rowley, are we? So that now reads that we're approving this request. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Obviously, we're getting tired.
Hello.
We should be able to still put our hand up.
It's not about that, about supporting the Christmas concert. The bottom of this, I don't know why Resolution 21849 is there regarding Hilton Hall use and the Brighton Girl Guides.
I'm sorry, I don't know either. Deputy Clerk. We have just approved the booking of Hilton Hall, a request from Mr. Buchanan. And then 15.2 underneath that has a resolution that receives the Hilton Hall usage and that council approves the Brighton Girl Guides organization to use the Hilton Hall for free. Is that something we need to approve? Go ahead.
If I may.
No, we've already done that. I see. So it's just backup information for the Mr. Buchanan request. It's just backup information. You're welcome. Good question. FYI correspondence, moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council receive the resolution from the Township of Springwater supporting any provincial effort to require its municipal levy only to core mandated programs and services regarding Conservation Authority levies. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Once again, why wouldn't we support that?
I would support supporting that. But Deputy Mayor? Councillor Bateman? The motion now reads support the resolution. Is there any discussion now? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council receive the resolution from the Township of Springwater regarding the request from the Township of details, costs, mandated operations from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority prior to the 2020 budget. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Yeah. All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council receive for information the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry notice regarding proposal to amend 3 statutes and make a new regulation. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And now I'll open the floor to question period from the members of the gallery who remain. If you have a question with regard to tonight, anything that appeared on tonight's agenda, gentlemen? Nothing? Thank you. We will take a 10-minute recess before going into our closed session meeting, and we're going to get a picture taken.